So the transcript focuses heavily on the notion of the Biden family as a, quote, brand which gave value to Hunter's business activities. One key question is whether or not he traded on his famous name by linking it to Joe Biden and promising to open doors.
The business was his access to his father. So in the act of having a conversation, they are burnishing the Biden brand. The business here, the business of Washington, is access. And if you're the son of the vice president, you have the highest access.
Joining us now, former Speaker of the House and Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich. Newt, great to have you. So I just want to read to you just a little bit from this transcript that we got today, and we brought to you first in the 9 a.m. hour. This is Devon Archer before the House Oversight Committee saying this. Archer said, "My only thought is that I think Burisma would have gone out of business if it didn't have the brand attached to it. That's my only honest opinion. The capabilities to navigate D.C., that they were able to basically be in the news cycle, and I think that preserved them from a longevity standpoint." Congressman Goldman says, but how would that work? Archer responds, because people would be intimidated to mess with them. Goldman says, in what way? Archer says, legally. The transcript is behind closed doors. It's not under oath, but it is illegal to lie to Congress. And now we have, Mr. Speaker, this out there so everybody can see it for themselves.
Well, and I think Chairman Comer's indicated that I think next week they're going to have bank records. All these things just keep building week after week. And look, I understand that the Democrats have to play defense and they have to pretend they don't understand it. But to any normal person, this story is not complicated. You had a guy who had no skills, no professional ability, who's making money in Kazakhstan, Romania, Ukraine, Russia, and China. Now, why, if his name had been Hunter Jordan or Hunter Smith, he wouldn't have made a dime. The fact is he was playing off of his father, and we now know, despite Joe Biden's lies, that in fact Biden was part of the game. You know, he not only called people, but he also went at least on 2 occasions to Cafe Milano and had dinner with major foreign businesses.
And that's in the transcript as well. I don't think a lot of people realize this, and maybe you remember that, you know, I mean, Joe Biden is known as Amtrak Joe, right? Takes the train from Wilmington into Washington back in for the weekend. Hunter was a board member of Amtrak. He was on the board in July of 2006 and resigned that position in January of 2009 when Joe Biden was elected vice president. And if you think about these elements, Mr. Speaker, like the relationship goes back even further, I think, than most people have been led to believe.
Look, it's actually a bigger story. Andy McCarthy wrote a book in 2019 called Ball of Collusion. And in there, he really makes the case that it is Obama who politicizes and destroys the integrity of the Justice Department. It is Hillary Clinton who figures out she can steal like crazy and nobody's going to prosecute her. And here's poor Joe Biden. I mean, he's watching Hillary make millions and millions of dollars. Nothing's being done to her. And he thinks, hey, maybe the family can get in on it. So he's a piker compared to the Clintons. The amount they took in just one deal over uranium going to Russia was probably $35 million. None of that has ever been thoroughly investigated. And then Biden comes along, and guess what? He was correct for a long time. The Obama Justice Department and the people who are still there who are Obama people were never going to go after Hunter, ever. I mean, that's why you've had this very weird parallelism of anything that Donald Trump does is terrible, anything that Hunter Biden does is excusable, and the country is gradually beginning to realize how really sick and how really corrupt it is.
Mr. Speaker, listen to this exchange on Cavuto yesterday with a sitting Democratic congressman trying to explain this away.
Did it concern you when you heard that?
Well, look, breaking news. The president talks to his son, right?
But he wasn't just talking to the son, right? He was talking to others the son was talking to, allegedly.
Devon Archer says they never discussed the business, that he wasn't involved in the business.
I think you said something really important, which is that this isn't really that complicated, right? Everybody understands what's going on here. And now the Bidens have put the members of Congress, the Democrats who want to defend them, in a pretty ridiculous position.
Well, look, you know, I was looking up this morning. One of Jack Smith's charges against Trump is based on a 53-year-old bill involving the Ku Klux Klan in South Carolina. Well, it turns out The very first Congress in 1789 passed a bill involving bribery among customs officials. So maybe you could have a parallelism. The Bidens could be charged under a 1789 act, which has no relationship to today, and Trump can be charged under an 1870 act, which has no relationship today. And we can realize what you have is a Justice Department which has gone crazy. This is exactly the opposite of how the Justice Department should operate. There's a brilliant speech by Attorney General Robert Jackson in 1940 talking to U.S. attorneys and saying to them, you got to be really careful. You have so much power that you cannot get involved in distorting and in going after people just because you don't like them or just because the person. It's a brilliant speech. And it is exactly what we're now faced with. And frankly, I think that the funding for these activities ought to be cut off by the Congress. And as of September 30th, they should be gone.
So we're going to get the Trump story in a moment here, but just want to have a flashback here to November of last year. This is President Biden talking about former President Trump and the possibility at that point that he might seek re-election.
We just have to demonstrate that he will not take power by, if he does run, making sure he, under legitimate efforts of our Constitution, does not become the next president again.
Under legitimate efforts of our Constitution, does not become president again. What does that say to you, Mr. Speaker?
Look, we have never seen a major political figure as routinely and methodically assaulted as Donald Trump. It's a sign of how desperate the establishment is. They are terrified that if he's still standing in October of 2024, he is going to become the president. And of course, if he does become the president, all of these people are in jeopardy. Remember, Watergate led to 46 people being convicted. The only cabinet officer ever to go to jail was Attorney General John Mitchell for obstruction of justice. And I'm absolutely certain that the current Attorney General, Merrick Garland, is in grave danger of being charged with obstruction of justice and with having destroyed the system. I mean, I think the Congress, frankly, should be right now subpoenaing all the documents between Smith and Garland, because I think Garland's been directing this. I think the timing is weird. As you know, the other night, Waters put up a chart that showed something happens to Hunter, the next two or three days something happens to Trump. Something happens to Hunter, the next 2 or 3 days something happens to Trump. I mean, this is so blatantly, disgustingly political that it has no business being in the Department of Justice.
No. Thank you for your time. We're going to see it go down a bit later today. Newt Gingrich, thanks. We'll talk again very soon.
I'm Steve Doocy. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.